Hey all you cool cats and kittens, Nick here with VanCan, and today I clean up my backyard. I play soccer with the local wildlife, and I get a large order of lumber. I finally got the opportunity to do something I've wanted to do ever since I started riding bikes over 15 years ago, and that's build a backyard ramp. I went online, found my local Home Depot, and had them deliver 2x4s, plywood, and screws. It's been a few years since I've done any woodworking projects, and I was surprised how little material I actually needed, considering what I had planned. That's 4x8 sheets of 3/4 inch plywood, 8-foot 2x4s, and a couple 100 packs of deck screws. The first step was getting the material where it needed to be, which was a breeze with my little helper. We don't have a ton of room where we currently live, so optimizing our space is pretty important. Since I don't have much experience with carpentry, I gave my pal Garrett a call. He's a local wood master. He drew up the plans for the ramp and let me know what material I'd need to get it done. Our first step was laying out what would become one side of the ramp. The plan was to build a half pipe that is 4 feet tall and 16 feet from coping to coping. We used a template found online and modified it to fit my yard.
Usually people do it as a separate thing, but the way that we plan this was that the flat deck is just going to be part of the template. Yeah. So usually people are make just a template and add the flat deck. We're actually going to have it part of the template. So like this is the flat deck, and now we're going to add the transition into it, and it'll be this whole thing.
The first thing we needed to decide was the radius of the ramp. To get a smooth transition, you want the transition to be part of a circle, and the steepness of the ramp is determined by the radius you choose. Too steep and it's difficult to ride. Too mellow and you won't be able to do any stalls. To get a consistent radius, one trick is to tack down a screw, attach a string whose length is the radius you want, and use a pencil at the other side to draw out your transition. Since this is the first ramp either of us have built, we weren't sure which measurements would work best. That meant getting the tape measure out and drawing out a few different possibilities.
Let's bring it in more. Let's do it, because it's gonna be nice to be able to stall and stuff, right? Like, yeah. It's gonna really suck if it's like,
yeah, if I could only foot jam and disaster it.
Foot jam and do like really little.
Yeah, I definitely want to be able to do peg tricks on it.
Yeah.
Each time we would look at the layout and decide if it would work for bike riding. We started out with an 8-foot radius and drew a few more down to 5 feet.
What you could do is like, we could build this ramp and say you want a little bit of steepness on one side, you could buy like
just a bit of wood to redo it.
Some 2x4s, not even redo it. Put some 2x4s right on top of the ramp.
And just like extend it?
Just like up here, so it'll be like a little flat stall thing.
Yeah, you could
do that too.
Yeah, that's true. I could put a sub box on the top.
Yeah.
Like if I can't stall it, I could just put a sub box that I just jump onto. And
yeah, that's pretty close. Or like, yeah. Or just like a few pieces of wood that you could that you could catch.
Oh,
you know?
Like
you could just do like, you know how we have the 2x4?
Yeah.
We could stack 2 2x4s and then it's just has a little bit of steepness to catch it.
Yeah, that's a good point actually.
It would act as your coping basically.
After deciding that a 5-foot radius would work best, it was time to cut. We moved away from the house to not annoy the neighbors, and we created the sides of the quarter by cutting our template out of the 3/4 inch plywood. We then used our newly cut ram section as a trace to create 3 more copies. That way, we get 4 cuts that are almost identical. Now, since they aren't exactly the same, we attached all 4 pieces together, lining up their uncut corners, and trimmed them down so they're as similar as possible. Now it's time to bring them back to the yard and start framing up the half pipe. We lined up both sides of the ramp and attached them with 2x4s. Since this is a very temporary ramp, we aren't that concerned with it being perfect. After getting one side up, it's time to level it out, and I decided it's best just to dig into the gravel and make it as level as we can. We do the same for the other side, attaching both sides of the ramp with 2x4s, and already things are starting to come together. At this point, you should see my vision for this backyard ramp, and we can't wait to ride it. Hey, what do you eat? We frame the rest of the half pipe using 2x4s spaced every 16 inches. This will be the skeleton of our ramp, and surprisingly it's coming together really fast. In just a few hours we have something that resembles the final product. The next step was to square our frame and make sure that everything is straight and level. If we didn't do this, there's a good chance that when we went to sheet it, several pieces would be misaligned and it would cause endless headaches.
Yeah, I was thinking about sheeting it first because then we can square this and then sheet it, and then that keeps it square for forever.
Now we did something a bit unusual, but we're using 3/4 inch plywood for the first layer of sheeting. Usually you would use 2 sets of 1/2 inch, but we decided to see if this made it stronger. We did find out that it's actually a bit too stiff to bend. So we cut curves into the plywood to allow it to be more flexible. Basically, these are cuts partway through the plywood that make it thin enough to fit the curvature of the ramp. Once we'd done the cuts, we used a bit of our own weight to push the plywood down and attach it to the frame. We then took a break from sheeting to finish up the last bit of framing. The only thing left to do was make our flat deck, which again was made with 2x4s spaced 16 inches. Since we have limited space, the flat deck stretches over the flower bed, and we have to add some extra support on the other side. With the flat deck frames in place, we went back to sheeting the ramp. We added a few more bits of 2x4 for extra support, and spots where we can anchor down the plywood. We cut a few more small pieces of plywood and fill in the gaps. Things are really starting to come together, and it's getting close to rideable. A few more curve cuts on a few more pieces of plywood, and we screw down more sheeting. And just like that, we have a rideable ramp. And of course I've got to test it out, even though we've got a lot left to do. Now that we know it rides well, it's time to get back to work. We throw on the flat deck sheeting, add a few more screws, add some support, and we're getting really excited about riding this thing. So, why not do another test ride?
So scary, so steep. That wasn't that bad.
Yeah, like once it's built.
That felt pretty good.
It's getting late, so we decided to call it a day.
Today we're almost done. Hopefully we can finish this. We're gonna finish off this deck right here, sheet it, brace it up, try to make the whole ramp sturdier, and then we're gonna sheet over the whole ramp again and should be finished. Look a lot nicer. With
And we're closing in on the final steps. We're adding the second layer of sheeting to the ramp. This layer of 1/2 inch plywood will smooth out the transition and make sure we don't fall through it. And with a few bits to clean up, the ramp is complete and ready to ride. We get out the bikes for a quick first ride.
God, it is so steep, holy crap.
And how insane is this? A half pipe in my backyard. It's something I've wanted to do for over a decade, and it's finally done. Make sure you're subscribed and turn on notifications to see all the videos I make with this ramp. And who knows, maybe we'll make a few additions. And with that, I'd like to say a huge thank you to all my supporters on Patreon. They're a huge reason why I can make videos like this. And as a thank you, they receive perks like early and exclusive videos, discounts on products like Cushcore and Shut the F Up systems, stickers, and access to our community Discord. Head over to Patreon if you want to check it out. And with that, I'll see you in the next one.